I love the call and response. I always wanted that, so thank you. I hope everyone is well today. It's nice to see a lot of faces that were with us yesterday to welcome our Hess Scholar, Russell B. Young. Let's welcome him again. My name is Gaston Alonso. I am the director of the Ethel R. Wolf Institute for the Humanities at Brooklyn College. And I get this amazing treat to get to welcome our Hess Scholars and to participate in all of this every year. So, and you're all in for a treat this morning. We have an amazing panel to discuss these issues about the intersection of faith and justice. So thank you for being here for this important conversation. Some quick announcements. If you're a student and you are here for extra credit and you didn't sign in on the way in, make sure you sign in on the way out. 2, we are recording this event, and a recording of it will be available on the Wolf Institute YouTube channel. In fact, it is being live streamed. Next, I want to let you know that on April 27th through the 28th, the Dean of the School of Humanities and Social Science is hosting a student expo. So if you are a student researcher, or if you're a faculty who is sponsoring a student research, by all means, you can use the QR code in the program or right here. Register and come and share your research. It's an amazing 2 days where we get to learn from our students and the knowledge that you have produced. So please sign up for that. And lastly, this is the first of 3 events today. It's like an academic marathon. At 2:15, best-selling author Ava Chin, the author of Mott Street, will be here to discuss the power of memory and history, along with Russell. And then at 3:40, we have an event on Asian American mental health, all of it right here. And then tomorrow morning, it's a real marathon, Russell. Tomorrow morning here at 11, Russell will be giving his Hess Memorial Lecture looking at the history of Asian American activism and the lessons we can draw for our times. And with that, it is my honor and my pleasure to introduce my colleague in political science, Professor Ken Esty, the director of the Studies in Religion program.
All right, welcome. Thank you for being here. It's fantastic to be with you. Thank you, panelists, for being here. I'll introduce you in a moment. Thank you all for being here. Today, this panel, in just a few moments, I think goes really to the heart and the core of some of the key concerns of our day. But let me get there in a moment, and just to say that as the coordinator for the Studies in Religion program, and speaking on behalf of the Studies in Religion program, we are honored to co-sponsor this panel. Very honored to co-sponsor this panel. And I just want to say that the panel today is titled Belief and Belonging, Faith Communities and Justice. And we are in a time when belief or certain types of religious beliefs actually preclude belonging. There are too many faith communities that have forgotten or pushed away justice. So the question is, what good can come of belief in faith in the work of solidarity and social justice today? Or might belief in faith be compatible with solidarity and social justice today? I might add, allow me this advertisement, I might add these are questions we take on in the Studies in Religion program. And so, if you would like to major or minor in Studies in Religion, I invite you to consider that, and I would be very happy to talk with you about that after our session today. And I do not feel that I'm poaching from other majors, because you need to have another major in order to major in the Studies in Religion. So I feel very free to just say, come one, come all. We are deeply eager and look forward to your interest. So, to save time for questions and answers at the end, allow me to introduce all of the speakers all at once, and then we'll go straight to the remarks. So, in the order of the remarks, it's my honor again to introduce Jerry Park, Associate Professor, Department of Sociology, Baylor University, and President of the Association for the Sociology of Religion. And your research interests include the sociological study of religion, race, identity, culture, and civic participation with a focus on Asian American experiences. And we were just talking before the session today, and you're already giving me titles of books to look up, and so the research continues. So thank you so much. And yes, indeed. And Reverend Deborah Lee, Co-Executive Director of the Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity, a California-based interfaith abolitionist organization dedicated to the dignity and full inclusion of immigrants and those impacted by incarceration. Lee is an ordained minister of the United Church of Christ. So, welcome. Russell M. Jung, the 2025-2026 Robert L. Hess Scholar in Residence. Jung is Professor of Asian American Studies at San Francisco State University, and over the last, I'd say quarter century, but that sounds like a long time, so let's say 25 years, Over the last 25 years, his research has shaped the fields of Asian American studies and the sociology of religion. Co-produced the documentary The Oak Park Story, 2010, about a landmark housing lawsuit involving Cambodian and Latino tenants. Also, in 2020, Jung co-founded Stop AAPI Hate, a leading advocacy organization. And so without any further delay, we move directly to Professor Park. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Esty, for those great introductory remarks. Good morning. It's still morning, right? Yeah, good morning, everyone. And thank you again to all the organizers for this amazing panel. I'm really honored to be a part of this esteemed crowd. Everybody's leaving. Given that we're focusing on and celebrating the work of Dr. Russell Jung, I wanted to turn my attention to some of the writings that he had shared with us earlier and what that sort of inspired for me. As a sociologist, my training is primarily in quantitative methods, but I also do a little bit of qualitative. But when I see the work of Dr. Jung and the amazing archival research he does, the interviews that he does, I can't compete against something like that. So I often turn to the quantitative. And that's what I wanted to do today in today's conversation about Asian American religious belonging and community action. From Russell's historic examples, if you get a chance to read some of the things he's just shared with us recently, he's been able to show historically that Chinese Americans especially have actually been quite active in standing for themselves in the midst of intense xenophobia, intense anti-Chinese sentiment in the United States. But what's really remarkable is that he's been unearthing the ways in which religious community within the Chinese American community has actually been part of the generation of a lot of this activism. It often reminds me of the work of the civil rights movement, that the work of the Black church has often been forgotten in many of these particular conversations. I think the stories of Buddhist and Christian Asian Americans has often been left out as well, because many of them are quite active, and it's because they are already in organized spaces, organized religious spaces, that they're able to do that. So I don't have any skills to look into further archival kinds of work, so I had to turn to the questions that I could possibly answer. So I looked at this data set that came out in 2021 called the Collaborative Multiracial Post-Election Survey. I know you guys aren't methodologists, so I'll try to minimize the details, but just to give you a little bit of a picture of this, the CMPS is basically designed by political scientists who have for many years argued that the role of minority Americans in the electorate and electoral politics is often left out. And that's simply by the nature of the way we do social science surveys. If you have a population that's 63% white non-Hispanic, then 63 out of 100 people that you survey should be white non-Hispanic. That means all the minorities add up to only about 37 people. From those 37 people, 19 of them will be Latino, 12 of them will be African American, and maybe 6 will be Asian. And that's like everybody, right? The Cambodians, the Koreans, the Chinese, everybody mixed together as just 6 people. So obviously we can't make that representative, right? So they start scaling up. But even if you scale up, you still can't get a sufficient number of people. So the CMPS said, we're going to try to address that. We're going to find data set samples where we can do what's called oversampling. So in this particular data set, we have 4,000 Asian Americans, 4,000 African Americans, 4,000 Latinos, and 3,000 white Americans. And with this special method called weighting procedure, you can basically rebalance that number of respondents so that they become reflective of the U.S. population. Okay, so that's a big mouthful, right? We're going to focus just on the Asian American sample that was surveyed just after the 2020 election, all right? And so the data was collected in 2021 between the months of April and August. So Stop AAPI Hate had been just launched off the ground. We've been seeing lots of reports of people that are of Asian American backgrounds that are experiencing all kinds of discrimination. And so the CMPS was launched during that time to ask all kinds of questions about what their position in society feels like for Asian Americans as well as other minority groups, but also what are their political participation factors looking like. Okay. One of the things that excites me about the kinds of work that I do and kind of work that was inspired a lot by Dr. Jung was the role that religion plays in Asian American societies or communities around the country. And one of the things I always love to share, and I hope this doesn't bore you guys to pieces, but I like to share with you the amazing diversity of religion in Asian American society. So this is a conversation I wanted to share with respect to generational difference, okay? We've talked a lot about immigrants in the past panel, and we're going to talk some more today about the immigrants, but I want to show you how the profiles of Asian American immigrants, as well as the second generation, those who are born to parents of immigrants, and then the third generation beyond them, okay? So here's the typical display of what immigrants among Asian Americans looks like. The sample size is 1,820. You couldn't get this on a typical survey, right? You would need something like the CMPS with this very intentional sampling design to pull this off. So here's the main takeaway. Christians, that is Catholics, people who identify as conservative Protestant, and those that are non-conservative Christians, all of them add up to about 1/3 of the population. Buddhists, Hindus, and Muslims, the largest main non-Christian religions for Asian Americans, they take up about 1/4 of the immigrant population of Asian Americans, and a full third say that they have no religion or they are atheist or agnostic. So when you add those together, those are the general spreads of these different religious groups. For those of you that are really into the thick of this sort of thing, if you're asking, well, what is the difference between a conservative Protestant and a non-conservative Protestant, it's pretty straightforward. Number one, we have to ask first, what is your religion? Okay? People check various boxes, things like Protestant, Christian, et cetera, and then we ask a follow-up question for everybody that said, I'm a Christian. We ask them, here's a set of labels. And among these labels, we included evangelical, fundamentalist, Pentecostal, liberal, and like none of the above. So everybody that selected Pentecostal, fundamentalist, evangelical, we classified them as conservative Protestant. All right, this is the kind of language that we're working with. So that's what that looks like for the immigrant composition of Asian Americans. This is what the second generation looks like. No big change among the Christians. Buddhists, Hindus, and Muslims still take up about 25%, and those with no religious affiliation also at about 1/3. Oh, wait. That's correct. And then finally, the third generation very much mirrors the second and first generations. So interestingly enough, there's no major shifting in religious affiliations over these three different generations. Okay? This doesn't mean that in your lifetime, for example, that if you started out in one religion, you're always going to stay in that religion. This is just a snapshot of what's happening in 2021. Okay, so let's get into the meat of this. A survey question was asked, since January 2020, have you, and they have a whole bunch of different things that people could have participated in, and the one question I selected was, worked or cooperated with others to try to solve a problem affecting your city or neighborhood? So this would be something that would hopefully generate conversation in today's panel. So here are the answer choices. Yes, I am certain I did that last year. 2, I think I did that, I just can't remember for sure. 3, no, I did not do this, and I am unlikely to do this. 4, no, I did not do this, but I might do this in the future. And 5, no, I did not do this, but I will definitely do this in the future. So I had to do some background research to figure out like how exactly do you code all of this, because these are sort of squishy kinds of responses, right? So what I was recommended was to take these two answers and just treat this as the affirmative. These folks, we can say for certain they did it or very likely did it. Okay? So these are the people that said, yes, I cooperated in some kind of neighborhood project of some sort. And that allows me to do this visually with this kind of survey information. Taking all of these affirmative answers, I can break them up by different religious affiliations, as you can see below, and I can also break them down by different generations. So as you can see, for this bar, this refers to everybody in the immigrant generation. So 21% of conservative Protestant Christians said that they had participated in some kind of a community project. Okay? The immigrant generation is over here at 22%. The 1.5 or second generation would be over here at 22%, and then the third generation drops to about 11% for this sample of conservative Protestant Christians. Does everybody follow? Okay. One thing to clarify too, some may be asking, what do you mean by 1.5 or second? Sociologists have, since the 1990s, made a case that if you were born in another country but effectively raised in the United States, you're very similar to somebody who was basically born in the United States and grew up here. So what's the cutoff number? Age 12. If you came to the United States before age 12, you're considered 1.5. If you came after age 12, so 13 and up, you were mainly socialized someplace else, probably the country of your parents, right? So with that kind of experience, identity issues and other kinds of factors related to that will probably work differently than somebody who was born in another country and showed up before age 12, right? So everybody follow that? So that's why I combined the 1.5 with the second. All right, so this is the conservative Protestant group. Not a whole lot of shifting until you get to that third generation, right? But notice what happens with the non-conservative Protestants and the Catholics. By the time you get to the third generation, we're seeing this upward trajectory of participation in community projects. Okay? So there's a little bit of a shift from first to second generation, especially for the non-conservative Protestants. Catholics, not so much, until you get to that third generation. All right, so those are the Christians. What happens to other groups? Here are Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists. What we see, number one, and notice that the scale is trying to stay as consistent as possible across each of these different groups, so I'm not trying to deceive anybody here. I'm showing you the exact same scale. Muslim Americans, Muslim Asian Americans in particular, are participating more in their community projects compared to Asian American Christians. But again, we see this three-generational shift upward, okay? But that's not the case when we look at Asian American Hindus, but it does show up again when we look at Asian American Buddhists. That third generation seems to show a lot more engagement with community issues compared to other groups. Okay, there's one more set of groups I wanted to show you. These are the folks that we sometimes describe as religious nones, people who identify as agnostic, atheists, or none. Among Asian Americans, as you can see, participation is fairly low, right? Almost as low as Asian American Christians, actually a little bit lower, depending on which generation we're even looking at. So, what does this all mean? Does religion matter for civic participation among Asian Americans? Big answer, yes, absolutely, it does make a difference. But generation matters too, and I want to reemphasize that the third generation seems to be making a big push towards that civic engagement among Asian American Catholics, non-conservative Protestant Christians, Muslims, and Buddhists. However, we should put this important qualifier. Recall that the survey was done in 2021, the year after the pandemic. Okay? The survey question asked, what did you do during the last year? That means, what did you do during the pandemic year? So there may be some issues with what participation rates look like during the period of the pandemic versus what that might look like now. So the big question becomes, will these patterns continue after the pandemic? So the CMPS was conducted for the 2024 election. The data was just released in November of 2025 to all the collaborators. So I'm busily trying to crunch all that information as well. So hopefully maybe some other time I'll be able to share that with you as well. So that's it for what I wanted to bring up. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Oh, you have slides? Okay.
Thank you, Jerry, for demonstrating. This is what sociologists do. Wow. They do other things.
Right.
It makes me really wonder about that third generation. And I've been part of social movements for many generations, and I'm thinking particularly right now about the Manzanar pilgrimage, which was the work of repair around the historic incarceration of Japanese Americans in the United States. And there's a thing about, the first generation, maybe the job, like does each generation have a different responsibility? And the first generation of immigrants, maybe the responsibility is to survive, right? And maybe the second generation, you have some responsibility to care for that family. And maybe the third generation, you start to be able to think beyond in a bigger way. So anyway, every generation has to think about your generational responsibility. But as I thought about that research question, was it, have you done something to help your community in the last year? I wonder how each of you would answer that question. And I want to think back about when I was in college and I met Professor Gaston. We were involved in helping our community in a hunger action center, addressing homelessness in our community. And it was my first exposure to kind of different strategies, right? What are strategies that people try to help the community? What are strategies of how people try to create change? And one thing for me, as I think I also met, Russell at this time too, one thing for me was that I was looking for a place that I could feel integrated. Is there a place where I can show up and be involved in social change in my whole self? Bringing my racial identity, bringing my gender expression, bringing my faith expression. And so this has kind of been my search of like, how do we show up as our whole selves when we can bring our full power, all of our gifts into the art of making change? Our organization is one of the expressions that I have found that has been a place where I can bring, and we try to create spaces where people of different faith traditions can come and bring their whole selves. And what we mean by human integrity is the wholeness of every person and the oneness of humanity. And so how do we try to live in our wholeness and to create more oneness in humanity and in the world? Russell is one of our volunteers, by the way. So one of the ways of social change, it's not new. Bringing faith into social change is not new. Many movements, really critical movements in the world, have brought in all the power of culture and faith into doing social change. It's not just like a Marxist analysis. It's not just that kind of a union organizing, but there's cultural ways that we can organize and make social change. For me, when I was a young activist, it was like I wanted to be in a place where I felt didn't violate my own sense of beliefs when I'm advocating for change. And so for me, that led to the movement of nonviolence. And this idea that direct action or creating change wasn't just a strategy or an external strategy, but it also is a way of life. Like, how is it also part of how you practice living every day? So the words of Mahatma Gandhi are really critical in these moments. I just came back from Honduras and I met with some community organizers, and this is what they were talking about: radical patriarchy, extreme state violence, impunity, repression of human rights, corporations, the rich and the elite willing to extract and take everything by force, criminal organizations which have infiltrated the state, and collusion between international finance, the elite, and the military, and the use of right-wing religion using nationalism and religious scapegoating to create fear, obedience, and consolidating power. And I thought, wow, that sounds like the United States, right? That sounds like what we're living through. So there's a lot of people in the country right now, in our country right now, that are very concerned about an authoritarian takeover, a moment of authoritarianism to consolidate power, to eliminate checks and balances, and who continue to operate with impunity. Many groups are organizing. Indivisible, all across the country, is having a big thing the end of this month. All kinds of organizations are thinking of what to do. So what are the faith communities doing? Are faith communities talking about the threat of authoritarianism, and how are they organizing to do that? There's many trainings that are being held, you can look them up, called the Freedom Trainers. They're doing trainings all about this, about how do we organize and resist against authoritarianism. So I want to share with you a little bit about how we're adapting that training and how we're actually using it and putting it into practice for faith communities to come into this work. And I'll also share some of our own nonviolent experiments that our organization has been part of. Here's one, some photos of nonviolent experience. This was the time during President Obama's period of time where he became labeled the deporter-in-chief. There were massive deportations. This was before DACA. This was before there were protections for dreamers. And what made this was a lot of faith folks involved in San Francisco. What made this powerful was that this was in front of Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office. And it also was stopping an ICE bus. It was the presence of faith leaders, but more importantly, it was the presence of undocumented students who were actually putting their lives and future on the line by risking their own deportation by being involved with this kind of direct action. This is something more recent that Russell was part of with me just a few months ago in front of the ICE building. This is I guess your guys' Federal Plaza. For us, it's on Sansom Street, which actually used to be a Chinese women's detention center during the Chinese exclusion period. But now it's the ICE processing center in San Francisco. So this was faith leaders. This is when the National Guard were coming to California. And again, like many of our secular partners actually reached out and they asked for faith. This is like the first time for me being involved in movement work where actually secular organizers were asking for faith leaders to come and be on the front lines. Why is that? To come, and can you help set the tone? And can you do that? And so that, to me, that was really striking. I feel like we're in a moment now of faith communities. Our presence is adding something really important that people are recognizing. You can see it across the country. What you see here in California is happening in New York, it's happening in Florida, it's happening in Minnesota and elsewhere. And then also, as an interfaith community, we have been coming together since this will be our third year of doing a Gaza prayer pilgrimage. And it's a pilgrimage the length of Gaza, And this year it will be connected to the Oakland arms embargo, calling for the halt of the shipment of weapons from the Oakland airport. So this kind of actions continue. So we call our methodology faith-rooted organizing, but it's not new again. But this comes from many, for us particularly, this comes from many strands in different parts of the world. You know, from India, but also from here in our own context here, the Black freedom movement, the civil rights, bringing faith into the organizing and liberation theology in Latin America, and then multi-sectoral organizing in the Philippines, which also strongly use faith and religion as well. Here's some different images, different powerful and iconic moments of people of faith and nonviolent social change. So one of the things is, how do we understand power? Because we're up against power. We're trying to change power. We may feel we don't have power. So one of the important assumptions is that we all have inherent power. And what do we do with the power that we have? We are giving our power every day. We're using our power by every choice that we make, consciously and unconsciously. And that everyone has that. And the governments are depending on cooperation. So one of the powers that we have is that we can withdraw that cooperation if we're very mindful about it and how we want to do that. That we also have spiritual power. And I remember one of our volunteers said, oh, I get this faith organizing now. It's like we're organizing with the understanding that God is actually real, that it's not just us, but we are doing this with a sense of higher power in the universe, order in the universe. So faith has a spiritual power to transform ourselves personally, but to transform society. But also, how do we sustain movements and bring hope to movements that are in very difficult times? I want to just ask you guys a quick question. What do you think, and you can draw on your own faith experiences or ones that you see, what do you think that some of the gifts that faith communities can bring to social justice? Can I get a few answers from students? Yeah. Hope? Inherent spiritual quality. Beautiful. Yes, a value of that, right? Spiritually, we're equal. Yes.
Faith and hope that comes from church and from communities that believe in higher power have often brought people together, no matter who they are, especially in protests and even back in the day, especially in slave times, people relied on that sort of thing to keep going. So the sense of togetherness and a strong sense of the fact that we're not alone together in a way.
Yeah. Drawing that circle, bringing people in. Cute. One more, yeah.
Yeah, just to elaborate also, I think the gift that faith communities can bring to social justice is the sense of equality. No matter what religion you are, what faith you follow, we're all human and we're all equal. So,
Thank you. Equality. One last one. Do you have it?
I was going to mention the teaching that we bring. I think that a lot of people come into the understanding that there's certain morals behind faith communities that unify people. And then there's an understanding that, like everyone's saying, we're all people, right? Like that's
Yes. Teachings and text, right, that are very philosophically very deep. Yes. You named a lot of these already. I'll just see if there's any that we didn't say. One I think you didn't mention is like the moral imagination, right? Like, what's our vision for the future? Like, we can't just say what's wrong with what's now, but what do we hope for, right? What do we hope for our children or 7 generations into the future? What do we imagine could be possible? This idea of a different worldview, the symbols, what are powerful symbols that we have? The practices, hospitality. Yes, so I think we got a lot of those. And then here's some things that faith communities are already bringing into the movement, and you can look around in your own communities and look for that. There's a lot of moral protest. Faith communities can also be a place where to organize and train and form. How are we forming people to understand, or the skills they need to help the community? So that kind of organizing and trainings. Very concretely, mutual aid and material support. That's what faith communities have been doing all along. Protection and sanctuary from repression. You can think about ways that people, people are running in for safety. Spiritual bridge building, broadening the base, inspiring hope. And this is, I think, a lot of what we're getting asked to do, that how can we help maintain nonviolent discipline and tone and help to shape the message and control the narrative in a positive way that uplifts certain values and courage in difficult times. So this is taken from the Freedom Trainers training. These are some of the strategies that they're saying we need right now to counter authoritarianism. And you can think about how faith communities are involved in protecting people right now. Can we in a more powerful way disrupt and disobey and get into our different strategies, organize ourselves into strategies like that, and building the alternatives. So here's just a few more slides of some of the work that we've been doing. This has been around closing detention centers. Here's a map of all the California detention centers that used to be. In the last 10 years, we're down to 7 detention centers now. So we've actually reduced immigration detention centers, but we're hitting a wall with the for-profit prisons and preventing detention expansion. That's going on right now across the country, often with the participation of faith communities. Another way has been, how do we encourage truth tellers, people who are directly impacted, who themselves are in a moment of intense suffering? What does it mean to come alongside people, to mourn their loved ones, to speak the truth in a world which discounts their voice, but to be able to really say who they are and what they're going through? And this quote, that the prophetic community is a no against what we don't want, but it also has to be a yes, an alternative vision for the future that gives people hope. Here's some images of some of the people we've helped to free from ICE detention. And this is part of the creating alternative, and this is part of the work Russell does. He's out there in the rain accompanying people to their ICE check-ins, but in the accompanying, we're actually creating beloved community. We're creating new relationships across barriers and boundaries that exist, and kind of creating community against the isolation and stigmatization that people experience. So, thank you.
Actually, can we bring back Jerry's slide? Yeah. Could you go to, so I'll go.
Yeah, we can just use it.
So good morning. I'd like to thank Jerry and Deborah for sharing about the role of religion in pursuing justice and for participating today. I really loved the students' comments about their faith communities, what their gifts they're bringing here, and you have so much wealth. And you have so much power among you here that I really want to uplift that and acknowledge that. If you go to the next slide. So I just want to make a few comments on Jerry and Deborah's okay. So to share my story, I grew up in a conservative Chinese church, so I would grew up in this first category. And you could see that conservative Christians, about 1/5 of conservative Asian American Christians participate in doing something to help their community. And because I'm like fourth, fifth generation, I would belong to the lowest bar. And it's seemingly that the more you become conservative Christian, the less likely you are to help other people. Now, that's sort of a damning statement, huh? And the question is that accurate for the rest of the United States? That the more you become conservative Christian, you become less concerned about broader society, your community, and maybe a little bit more self-oriented. And that could be one of the dangers of Christian nationalism that we're seeing today, that certain segments of our community want to build more walls. They want to defend borders because they want to protect their interests, right? And it makes sense that you want to take care of yourself. It makes sense that you want to protect your family. But to what extent, to what extreme do we care so much about ourselves and our own family that we allow others to be harmed, that we allow others to be incarcerated, that we allow others to be deported? And so that's sort of my story. Is like I grew up in the conservative church, but as I read scriptures, as I saw the teachings, as I saw the models of the black church, as I saw the models of Gandhi, is that what my Christian teachings were showing me? How should I live, right? And that was sort of, as I went to college, and I really sort of wrestled with, and this is for students, what are my own values? What are the convictions that I want to live by, that I want to embody? And when you're a college student, or like I was really searching for my identity. What's it mean to be Chinese? What's it mean to be American? What's it mean to be Christian? And you think a lot about how others perceive you, right? And you think about how you're seen in America. But James Baldwin had a quote, is that you don't know your ancestors necessarily, but you choose your ancestors. And you choose your ancestors by the values that they embodied. So I just wanted to adopt values. I wanted to adopt an ethnic identity based on values, not how others perceive me, but on what I thought were important for people, and values that I wanted to live by. I don't know how to tell you that. This is sort of random talking about how I grew up. And so for the college students here, as we think about the intersection between your ethnicity and racial background, your faith and belief system, and the values of the United States, I want you to think about what do you really want to live out, right? That's who you really are, is what you live out, right? It's not what you say, it's what you do. At least that's an Asian sense. You know, talk is cheap. It's how you act is really who you are. And so for me, this conversation on religious attitudes towards helping our neighbor, this conversation about how we can mobilize people for the common good, to be to hold out a vision of who we want to be, is really significant and really timely for today. So just to sort of wrap up my quick comments, there's a Confucian teaching that that talks about a Chinese sense of heaven, and it's called the Great Unity. And I don't have the quote right here, but Chinese, they don't look to the future for their vision of utopia or heaven, but they look back to the past. And in the past, during the great time of the Great Unity, it basically said authorities picked managers and officials who were fair. I guess that's pretty basic, right? Government was fair. Government responsibility is to make sure that everybody had land so that everybody could be taken care of. And in the Great Unity, everybody left their doors open because they weren't afraid of being robbed. They weren't building walls, but they left their doors open to welcome in their neighbors so they could share. And that was the aim of the Great Unity, is that we would learn to share and to be responsible for each other. And so I just hold out that for you today, that religion, all the gifts that you saw religion bring, it gives us a moral witness to say that's wrong. We can't be living this way. We can't be treating our neighbor in this way. We can't be treating other countries in these ways. It gives us moral courage to stand up to what's wrong and to say, you can't use your power in this way. And it gives us a moral vision of how we can see who we want to be as a community, who we want to be both as individuals in terms of our identity and who we want to be in terms of our nation. What type of values do we want to live by? And so I just want to, I look forward to talking to you about what do you want New York to be like? What do you want the United States to be like? How do you want to live as we move forward during these really difficult times? So thanks a lot.
Yes, we have plenty of time for questions and answers and comments. So students among us, please be first. And we have a mic that's going around. So we invite you to respond or to ask questions. And we're not proud. We'll wait all day. It's
Let me see if I can start off. To make sure that you know, I look like a student, but I am not a student.
You're a freshman, aren't you?
Yeah, I know that you. And but I mean, obviously I never say this, but I'm a pretty religious person. And but religion to me is very private, so I practice my faith in my own way. And because of work, that I really try very hard to create a community that people come in with different faith practices, and that's not always easy. And one of the things that I encounter, and I think that the student can definitely respond to it, is that there is a hierarchy of religion in this country as well as in the world. And within the religion, there is also a hierarchy or spokesperson. And so who define what is more important, more a virtuous religion? I think that is a conversation. And who define how one practice religion, how to show up in the religion or in the practice, and another conversation. And that makes our surface and our work very complicated. That a lot of time that while the intention is to bring people together and talk about, and I think that I really like the poem. I'm not a Christian, I don't believe in Jesus, but I do think that, I mean, I'm glad everyone had their children. I think there is a lot to say about how equal this world should be. And, but in practice, it's never like this, we all know that. And so I wonder how we actually approach this, that, because we really cannot debate those realities. That when people come into the space, there is a sense, you start speaking about it, and you know how they feel about you. And so that's something that I've been sort of think about a lot. And another talk on the top of all this, when I enter the country, people tell me when I study Asian American history back in Hong Kong, I'm thinking, for me to talk about a separation of state and religion, and a separation of state or church, and I was taught growing up until I moved to this country, we don't talk about church in Hong Kong when I come to this country. And obviously that's never practiced either. So you can see that there's a lot of confusion, my experience in this great experiments of the United States.
Yeah, so I'd like to ask the panelists, in what ways do you see the hierarchy among religious groupings in the U.S. and how is that demonstrated in politics and in sort of day-to-day life? Where do you see the hierarchy? Can you get answer too?
I'll defer to you.
Yeah, I think the most obvious would be Christianity. I guess the question becomes what kind of Christianity we're talking about. And the big conversation that's been happening all around the country is those that see Christianity as part of American identity. So this gets termed Christian nationalism. I think that is the dominating religion that is being practiced. Sociologists Michael Emerson and Glenn Bracey just recently published a book, came out last year, very short book, highly recommend, very readable, The Religion of Whiteness. And what they found was that among people who say that they should follow the Bible and what it teaches for making their decisions and how to live out their life, there's a certain branch that basically follows the Bible only to the extent that it supports white supremacy, right? The other group, which is unfortunately much smaller, they actually stand against all of that. They see the complexity of what the Bible teaches and what Christianity teaches. But yeah, the dominant group, at least among white professing Christians, tends to be this more whiteness religion. So they're making this provocative claim that it's not actually just Christian nationalism, but it's actually very specifically a worship of whiteness. It's not about God per se, but it's about their social position in society. So I'd say that's probably the dominant religion in American society. The interesting question for me is there's a lot of non-Christians, people who practice other faiths, and some of them I think subscribe to some of this sort of thinking, but they don't acknowledge it, or I don't even know if they realize that they are acknowledging or sort of following through with the same sort of thing, right? I wonder about the complicitness that so many of us as Christians or religious people, we don't realize we're actually subscribing to this religion of whiteness.
Yeah, I just want to repeat what Jerry just said. The dominant religion in America is whiteness.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your presentation. I am a professor in the sociology department here, and religion is also one of the topics I research and publish on. I have several considerations. My first would be for Jerry Park. When you say does religion matter for social justice, and you, in your presentation, I think I would like to ask you about some methodological consideration, because I heard today a lot of mention of being conservatism, being the conservative, but methodologically, I think there is like in your survey, like a bias, because I would quote Eduardo Galeano, who said in Spanish, no hay estadísticas para el alma, that is in English, there is no statistic to capture what is happening at the subjective level of the individual. Because one can be, and this is a problem we have in the political theory in the West, we have certain categories that are like close, liberal, conservative. But in those categories, in reality, because they are, like Victor said, they are ideal type, they do not operate in the concrete reality as such. So someone can be liberal on certain issues, certain topics, and certain fast problem aspect, and liberal on others.
Yes.
And I think this is one of the problems we have in the study in sociology of religion. Usually we typify Christian as conservative, but what Jesus Christ conservative? Jesus Christ is the founding father of the social doctrine of the Church of Liberation theology. So I think this is something I would disagree that Christian they are conservative because we are using quantitative approximation. There are certain aspects we are losing because I think a more mixed approach methodology, more quantitative reasoning will help us to better understand because the way we are using conservatism, I'm not totally satisfied with that. This is first consideration. Second consideration I have is you mentioned also in your presentation that Asian American, based on your research, there is a very interesting level of religious diversity. But I wanted to ask you, what about religious pluralism among the Asian American community? Because we know that now religious diversity and religious plurality, they are not the same. So I would like to hear from you about that component of religious pluralism in the Asian American community. And lastly, my last question would be very simple. Um, my last question would be, if we go to Durkheim provide a definition of religion, what is religion? But I would like to just start with the basic. For you, what is religion? We mentioned a lot since yesterday when in the introduction. Professor Young said that he believed that in the pandemic, his expectation that it was that American people will come together, but as a sociologist, we know that we are living in a very atomic society from a Durkheimian perspective. So what is religion for you, Professor? Can you help our students to understand what is the basic definition of religion we are managing today? Thank you.
Take that last question.
I'll do the religious pluralism and what's religion. You could do your.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that set of questions. I'll answer the first part. Yes, there's a lot of conflation of meanings behind the word conservative. The phraseology I used here is based off of a Western religious convention. So some have found issue with the phrase evangelical, that it refers to something that it's not intended to mean, but rather it should be part of something much larger. So that larger concept they described as conservative Protestantism. Conservative Protestantism is a branch within American Protestant Christianity where they hold to certain orthodox beliefs. So they would say like Jesus is definitely the Son of God. The Bible is the words of God, and your faith should be very important for your life's decisions. So when you put all that together, you can't do that on a survey, especially if there's only so much space you're allowed. So we've done some sort of side suggestions. So what I used here was the label approach. The label approach just simply says, we have a bunch of terms here. Please check as many of these boxes as you think apply to who you think of yourself as. And so everybody that was Christian, right, you were shown, am I a liberal Protestant? Am I an evangelical? Am I fundamentalist? Am I Pentecostal? Am I something else? So anybody that only checked, right, evangelical or fundamentalist or Pentecostal, we group them together as conservative Protestant. So for the past 30-some years, this has been a convention within the sociology of religion as far as defining what a conservative Protestant means. It does conflate, it does correlate a lot with political and socially conservative positions on various ideas, but there is a lot of diversity there too. There are left-leaning evangelicals. There are left-leaning conservative Protestants out there. Unfortunately, they are the smaller group. I'm showing my bias. They are the smaller group in conservative Protestantism.
Yeah, those are great questions. The first question about religious pluralism, if you remember the slides, a high proportion of Asian Americans are religious nones, N-O-N-E-S. And among all ethnic groups, Chinese are the least likely to name a religion that they belong to. So over half of Chinese in the USA, when asked what religion do you identify with or belong to, we answer none. But it's not like we're not religious. It's that we're religiously pluralist, like the professor said, right? That we adopt different aspects of Taoism and Confucianism and Buddhism, ancestor practices. And so it's hard for us to name which one religion we belong to because we belong to a lot of them. That makes sense to a lot of you, right? Part of the problem then is not that we Asian Americans are not religious, it's how we understand what religion is. And basically, in the West and in the United States, we take a Christian definition of religion based on belief and belonging. That you name who you are based on what you believe to be true and which group you affiliate, which church you belong to, right? But if you if you do home practices and you go to a lot of temples, you don't really belong to any religion. And you don't know what you believe in a lot of stuff. We Chinese, we believe in what works, you know. And so, my mom goes to tarot card readers. My mom goes to Catholic mass. My mom goes to Christian church. So, and it works, right? And so, so in my book, I come up, instead of using the Western definition of religion of what you believe and what you belong to, I take a Durkheimian view, which is what the professor mentioned. It's what you value and what you do regularly, ritually. And so that's a very good Chinese way of thinking. It's what you think is the most important thing to you, your highest values, and then how do you live out your highest values, right? What you do religiously. And so that's how I understand our sort of religious spiritual practices. It's more about what you do and what you value. And that's why the comment, whiteness is a dominant religion in America, really makes sense. If religion is about what you do and what you value in America, whiteness is a dominant religion. You're going to have these sort of themes weaving in and out.
I want to say something just about the first comment, that doing interfaith work is actually very difficult. It is really difficult. And many groups in your sociological survey will not even participate in doing something interfaith. But there tends to be, like in most cities, a lot of interfaith councils. And a lot of times they just talk and it's like learning about each other's religion, but they don't really do anything beyond that. I think if we do interfaith work in kind of the definition that you're working from, it's like we have a shared set of values, but we have our own traditions. We have our own stories. We have our own texts. And in the case of like the work that we do, but our practice is the same. It means we have different faiths and stories, but our practice is we're going to show up at the ice building. And we have the same values. And so that becomes the interfaith richness, is that we can learn about some of the different customs and things like that, but we're sharing and we're showing up week to week, but with shared practice.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much for this amazing conversation. So during the talk on belief and belonging and faith communities and justice, so I know that there was a powerful emphasis on religion as a moral witness and as the courage to stand up against injustices across different faith communities. As Muslim students here at Brooklyn College, many of us feel that our advocacy around Gaza is being framed as purely political rather rooted in our faith. And in some cases, and across different institutions in New York City and nationally, this has led to censorship and discrimination, faith-based discrimination. So my question, Professor Russell, is, in your view, what responsibility do institutions and university administration have to protect faith-based expression, and especially when it challenges like dominant narratives, and how can they ensure that belonging to all faith community isn't conditional on silence?
Thank you for that, and thank you for your witness and your courage in wanting to advocate. I think, okay, so I'll take a step back and argue that our institutions, our government should enable free speech, freedom of religion, and protect civil protest and discourse that enables that, especially minority perspectives, to be heard and acknowledged and validated. And to the extent that that's not happening, and that then it's not, again, the country that I would want to belong to. It's not the institutions that I think we're trying to reinforce in our obedience, and maybe the type of institutions that we would want to engage in civil disobedience towards. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I think Muslim voices are being marginalized by narratives that show how certain religious groups have more power than others, and that suppression, that discrimination is clearly wrong, and we can't conscience. So does that make sense to you all? Okay.
Yeah, and I would add too that there will be an intensification of this as we're now at war with Iran, and Christian nationalist ideology is being used to undergird this aggression. So unfortunately, the challenges mount. However, I think the backbone of our panelists is that much stronger, and we don't give up. But per your point, the challenges are here with us, and here at Brooklyn College too.
Yeah, I agree. And we can't just talk about the challenges. We have to talk about how can we implement, ways where we can allow them even belonging here on campus and nationally. We are in difficult times, and sadly, like as we enter a war and whatever, my Muslim identity as a student and as a woman, it's like a reminder of like that it's been 25 years since 9/11, and like it looks like we didn't learn anything from that as a country, as a community. So I really hope like there is some steps towards that. Thank you.
Yeah, and
Yes.
it's not the student's responsibility to secure and to be the voice of conscience. It's the institutional role to create safe spaces for students to be able to learn and to discuss and to live out their values. So I think Brooklyn College, my university, we have responsibilities to create those safe spaces for groups to thrive, for DACA students, for Dreamers, for Muslim students. I think for LGBTQ students, we need institutions to actually take that responsibility on rather than putting the onus on students themselves.
I think labeling things as political and not religious is a way of, like the media does this all the time. They'll be like, oh, like the thing that you saw where it was literally all faith leaders getting arrested. They would just say protesters in front of the ICE building. They took away the power that this was actually a faith thing, and that I think the stance on Gaza is a faith and moral question, not merely about political boundaries and rights to land and other things. But so I think that there's a power in there that they're trying to negate. It's something that to really continue to insist on.
Yeah, and we noticed that like the labeling is like hypocritical. There's hypocrisy in that. In certain instances, they want to remove like Muslim protesters, but in certain like if there was like an attack or like a Muslim terrorist, so now they bring that label in there. So it's like when the media can choose how that labeling works, it's really unfortunate.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe we're at time.
Oh, go ahead, Ash.
We can do one more question.
Oh, good. Let's do it. One more. Yes. Thank you.
All right. Hi, great panel. Thank you very much. This is a very prosaic question, but when we talk about morals, and it doesn't matter what religion you are, or if you have a religion, atheist, whatever, we talk about morals and values. How do you, as activists, balance is a problem I have with the activist communities I work with, balance our stated morals versus our practice. For example, we all complain about the 1%, we complain about the power structure, the elites, but I cannot stop even anarchists from going to Whole Foods or shopping from Amazon. And all of these basic contradictions that people do on a daily basis is so hard to grapple with. suggestions. I mean, these are talks I have all the time, and I find myself yelling at people. I want to berate people all the time. Not the consumers, but you have this problem between we're all capitalism is subsumed in a terrible way. So, sorry, I know it's a loaded question, but too much.
We can do this in 1 second. Yeah, go.
Well, I'll just say, like, I think when we're organizing as a spiritual community, there is a sense of like, oh, this is practice, right? That's why we call it spiritual practice. I didn't do well yesterday. I went to Amazon, so it's like, how do we hold ourselves in community accountable?
Yes.
Right? There's a
Yeah.
sense of community. You can't do religion by yourself. It's about the community, holding yourselves accountable. The sense of like, we start again. It's a new day, right? And it's like, how do we try to live in deeper and deeper integrity?
It's a note of grace, extending grace to each other and building solidarity.
So on that note, I guess we shall say bye, but for a short while, because you're all returning, we hope, at 2:50, recuperating connected stories, writing, fighting, nursing memoirs. And then we have another wonderful section, 3:40, on Asian American mental health. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was fantastic.
Yeah, yeah. I think you won well, right? It was a nice mix. Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right.
Oh, yeah, sure.
On the other side?
No.
Thank you so much for helping.
No problem.
You're at the core of this operation. That's what they